Hi, I'm Steve Antunovic from Croatian Chamber of Commerce in Victoria. Welcome to our business brief. The COVID-19 restrictions and lockdowns are having a huge impact on businesses. Some are able to operate with restrictions by limiting the number of customers at any one time, and some have had to shut down. So what happens with lease negotiations during COVID-19? Today I'm joined by Steve Milicevic, Principal of Milicevic Lawyers, a firm that provides legal services on commercial and franchising law, succession planning and commercial property. G'day Steve, thank you for your time today.
Hi Steve, thank you for having me.
Sorry. Pleasure. Steve, with these restrictions in place, assistance from the government may not be enough and many businesses are struggling to pay the rent. Can we talk a bit about lease negotiations during these COVID-19 restrictions? What is it?
Absolutely. So the federal government came out a few months ago now with a national mandatory code of conduct in relation to rent relief for tenants. So basically forcing landlords to provide some sort of rent relief to tenants. What's happened is then each state and territory has in some way, shape or form then enforced that by making state legislation or regulations and effectively followed the structure that was put in place by the national government. In Victoria, there's a specific process that needs to be followed, and what seems to be happening is everyone's following the national code. So there's a proportional reduction based on the reduction in revenue, as well as then a 50% waiver and 50% deferral of the balance of that reduction.
Okay.
That's being applied.
So what deals or arrangements are landlords and tenants doing at the moment in these situations?
Yeah, what we're seeing is a wide range of deals being done. The vast majority do fall within that formula prescribed by the code, that minimum formula. Others, we're seeing some landlords, and obviously those that can afford it, being extremely generous to their tenants, some giving full waivers or very, very, very generous waivers. On the other hand, there's landlords that can't afford it and are giving, or I shouldn't say giving, but negotiating or coming to an agreement on much lesser rent relief. And in cases where tenants are eligible, so they need to be eligible for JobKeeper, so at least have a 30% reduction in revenue. What we are seeing is some tenants actually paying over and above that minimum formula, if you like, so paying more rent than they have to. That's the vast majority. And then of course, there's always the disputes amongst those that can't get to an agreement.
Okay. So with these negotiations and to qualify to apply for the rent relief from the government, what financial information does a tenant need to provide?
Good question. That's a particularly sticky issue across the states. There's no clear absolutes from either the national or state governments on this. What is clear, the one bit that is clear, is that the tenant needs to prove a reduction in revenue. Now, for most landlords, as long as you qualify for JobKeeper, they've accepted that. Others have asked for quite detailed information, which goes against the whole purpose of the code of conduct that was issued by the national government. In Victoria, the Small Business Commissioner, as well as the government itself, have come out with policy and guidelines on that. And what they do say is extracts from a financial system or what's been provided to a financial institution or from the BAS statement, that's okay to be provided. They've been very clear on what a landlord shouldn't be asking for and what a tenant shouldn't be providing. So that includes financial projections, balance sheets, profit and loss, tax returns, bank statements, etc. So the idea or the whole ethos or purpose of the code and the regulations is to have a quick negotiation and agreement, and then for everyone to get back onto doing what business they can, depending on what restrictions and lockdown they're dealing with at the time.
Okay. So in situations where they can't agree, what happens in those sort of cases? If they can't come to an agreement?
Yes. As you can expect, not everyone's happy. Landlords aren't happy to be taking a pay cut, and tenants aren't happy to be forced to pay more than they have to. And of course, that leads to disputes or non-agreement, if you like. So in Victoria, there's a free mediation process where under the regulations, the parties have to go to before they can take it anywhere else. And that goes to the Small Business Commissioner. And they've been doing what I know of a very good job of getting quite a few negotiations and agreements over the line. So, and then not clogging up the court system. That is the next step in the process. Yeah. The mediations are conducted over the phone and by email to begin with. And if no agreement can be reached there by the mediator, they then have a face-to-face, if you like, over Zoom, Skype, or whatever other platform can be used. And those sessions, if you like, can last a couple of hours to a whole day. Yeah. I've had one client in particular who had their mediation suspended, and it looks like it's going into day 2. What tends to happen in those longer ones, from what I know, is lots of other issues are being dragged into the dispute, not just to do with the rent relief, but things about works, who's required to do what, and in some cases trying to terminate or change the essential terms of the lease that shouldn't be part of the mediation, if you like.
Steve, I'm just going to go back a step. What are the actual steps in when a tenant decides that they want to apply for the rent relief? Do they go via the landlord first and say, "Look, I'm going to apply for it"? What happens? What are the actual steps, or do they first go and apply for it and then advise the landlord?
Yep. So one of the first qualifiers to get this rent relief for tenants is they have to be eligible and participating in the JobKeeper program. If they don't have that, they have no right to rent relief. Mm-hmm. But I'm careful with those words, because what the national government did say is even if you don't qualify and you're struggling to pay rent, still do go talk to your landlord.
Yeah.
But there's no legally enforceable right there. So that's step 1 for the tenant. They then have to prove or provide evidence of that to their landlord and make an offer, basically, in very simple terms.
Should the tenants be discussing or initially raising this with their legal advisor or lawyer before proceeding, or do they just go and apply first and then only refer to legal advice if or when needed?
Well, you're asking a lawyer, so I'm going to say absolutely they should speak to their lawyer first, particularly in Victoria, because there is, and jokes aside, there is a very particularised form and requirement in the process that you need to follow. If you miss the eligibility, the landlord can turn around and say no. In most cases, that may simply then require the tenant to then go back and resubmit another offer. In the worst case, if something's not picked up early on, it could drag on for a dispute that goes on and on and on. Mm. And that's really the situation you want to avoid.
Yeah, okay. So what are your thoughts, or what as far as you're aware, will the rent relief be extended similar to JobKeeper?
It's a very good question. Just thinking back to the question you asked about what the tenant has to do. In Victoria, I just should add, the landlord has 14 days to respond to offers under the regulations. So they have to be on the ball, if you like, and not just ignore things or sweep them under the carpet. It should be dealt with pretty quickly. And what the landlord has to do is consider the tenant's circumstances and their own and put a counter offer or an offer back to the tenant. There's been a lot of whispers or rumours, if you like, just on this question about will there be an extension to this rent relief? The rent relief period is a 6-month period in Victoria and throughout the other states. It has been tied to JobKeeper, i.e. in the National Code of Conduct, there's lots of mention about qualifications, qualifying for, and the JobKeeper program, and the rent relief period running for the pandemic period. That, in the state context, that's been boiled down to a clear 6-month window. So in Victoria, from the 29th of March to the 29th of September. Mm-hmm. Other states vary a little bit. So the theory goes is JobKeeper has been now extended till March next year, albeit reducing. Does that then mean this rent relief period of 6 months is also going to be extended? There's been no whispers out of government about this. but speaking to other professionals and colleagues, we think it may come across or may be extended as well.
Yeah. All right, Steve, thank you very much for your time today. That's been really insightful about lease negotiations, COVID restrictions, and thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking to you again.